the things we're praying for people, and we just think, oh, this person is a sexual deviant and they have a spirit of fornication and we're just going to cast it out of them. Well, the truth of it is that the devil exploits our weaknesses. And what happens when you are sexually violated is your brain chemistry changes. What fires together, wires together. Meaning that a child does not have a conscience to understand why it's wrong. They may feel bad like it's wrong, but their body is sending them a separate message that this is enjoyable. This is human contact. So there is a level of connection and oxytocin released and pleasure released because human to human contact. And the body is set up with sensories and nerve endings that just have pleasure. So what happens is a child is confused, but that firing and wiring goes together. So secret sex becomes wired with pleasure. Secret sexual encounters become wired with secrecy and darkness and hidden things. So you look for darkness and you look for dark people and you look for dark scenarios because that is familiar to you. Within your love mapping, you were taught that sex was to be enjoyed in secret. And so what happens with that, we'll talk more in detail, is you have this secret private life that is disclosed. But this secret private life is filled with pleasure. And it's filled with guilt as well. So two things are happening. While you have a craving for pleasure, you also have shame and guilt. And those things erode your character, your inner character, and your inner relationship with yourself. You know that there's something in you that's not appropriate. You know there's something in you that is unclean. And so you begin to judge yourself. The Bible says that sexual immorality is the only sin that you sin against yourself. So you drag your body and your mind and your spirit into chaos, into the forest, because of a pleasure that was exposed to you, done to you, and that you may have begin to just duplicate in your life. And you don't understand why you can't shake it. Well, the brain, like I said, what fires together, wires together. So you have the experience and you have the pleasure. So the pleasure and the experience, they wrap in the memory, wrap themselves around in your mind and your brain cells, and it reminds you and it gives you craving. And then you continue to want to live in this lifestyle. And the Bible says this, it says, train up a child in the way that he should go. When he's old, he won't depart. Some of you have been trained, meaning your palate, you have an appetite for sexual immorality, and it is the result of sexual trauma. And you might be asking the question, why am I like this? It goes multi-generational. I know you guys have been watching the television and social media, and you're wondering how the multi-generational impact of sexual trauma is impacting our world. Well, it is impacting our world like this. This is a spiritual level. And some of you will argue me down, but if you know enough about epigenetics and you know enough about spirituality, you too can come to this conclusion. Sometimes when parents have an immense sexual perversion and they have just introduced their psyche and their cells and cellular member, all of these things, they've created all of these sexual appetites. You see it in their children. Yeah. Sometimes, I'm not saying every time, so don't say, this is an indictment. This is not all, but this is a sometimes. So it behooves us, it benefits us to deal with our issues so that we're not passing down sexual identity confusion to our children, perversion to our children, because we pass down things to our children. There's sometimes just a line of liars, a line of angry people, a line of sexually immoral people. Just if you look at it, we want to look at, all this family, they're all teachers, or they're all lawyers, or they're all scientists. And we celebrate that. But we don't look at the curses or the negative behaviors that we are passing down through the multi-generational process. If that is not a reason for you to want to deal with the issues that are plaguing you or that you may have experienced, I don't know what else will be, because we have a responsibility to hand our children something that is valuable in kingdom legacy. So it's time to have that conversation. Like I said, you may not hear it in the pulpit. You may hear people preaching against, people who are sleeping around, strippers, etc. But no one wants to deal with why the stripper strips. Mm-hmm. Why the prostitute tricks. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes the sexual trauma happens later in life as an adult. Maybe you're raped or beat, or your boyfriend turns you into a prostitute for profit. But for the most part, it happens in childhood sexual trauma. And by the time they get on the streets, they are trying to master the trauma. Mastering the trauma just means that you were in you had a traumatic experience. And now you want to not let the trauma you believe control you, but you want to become the one who is over the trauma. And you want to be the one to use the trauma and not have the trauma use you. So there is the term mastering the trauma. And again, this is just our introduction. But we see that, I'm not going to be abused anymore. I'm going to charge people. And now I'm in control of my sexuality and sexism. I'm not being the one who's being sexually traumatized, but now I'm mastering this sexual trauma, and I'm powering it, and I'm using it, and I'm doing videos, and I'm on the internet half naked because of the idea that now I am owning my sexual trauma and I'm making it work for me. I'm powerful in it, and I'm getting money for it. I'm getting positive attention for it, but that is still mastering the trauma. The African American community is just filled with essence of sexual trauma. I don't know another race that exploits themselves as much as we do with our sexual trauma. And other people exploit us too. I don't see as many Caucasian artists half naked, showing their behinds and their breasts, making lyrics about sex and bragging about sexual encounters. I don't see that. I don't see that in the Asian culture. I don't see it in any other culture as much as I see it in the African American culture. Hollywood has capitalized on our sexual trauma, and they have begun to exploit us. They're pimping our pain, and we feel like, well, as long as I get paid, I can exploit myself. I can be naked. I could, talk and live in this way and damage the African American culture. And we want to be sexy now as women. We don't want to be beautiful. The days of being beautiful are over. We take the compliment as sexy, which is a result of sexual trauma, traumatized culture. Beauty is still powerful. God made us beautiful, but we struggle now, even in the church, the high skirts, the blouse is open. We have normalized that. We have normalized sexuality. And the reason why we normalize it is because of sexual trauma somewhere on the radar. And we know that sexual trauma is on the radar because of all of the sex that is being had without commitment and without relationship. This is the casual hookup society. I have clients who tell me about it, and it's almost a situation where people brag on how many bodies do you have. When you hear people talk about that and say things like that, that is the result of sexual trauma.